The fire had already been burning for some time when I noticed how steady it was. Not loud, not bright, just a quiet, patient flame resting inside the stone hearth. I sat in the old wooden chair beside it, the one that always creaked if you moved too quickly, so I did not move at all. The room was warm in a gentle way, the kind of warmth that does not demand attention. Outside, the night had settled fully, and the windows held nothing but darkness and a faint reflection of the fire. There was no reason to think about the day anymore. The day had already gone where days always go. I watched one log slowly darken along the edges. It reminded me of how time works when no one is watching. Quiet, unrushed, certain. The clock on the wall ticked, but only if you listened closely. Most people never do. I remember a night very much like this one long ago, when the house was new to me and the silence felt unfamiliar. I had thought silence meant emptiness back then. I know better now. Silence is full of small things that only appear when everything else steps away. The fire made a soft sound, almost like a sigh. I let my shoulders drop without meaning to. Breathing became easier when I stopped paying attention to it. In moments like this, the body remembers how to rest on its own. There is a small door at the back of this room. It leads to a narrow hallway that most visitors never notice. The light never reaches all the way down it, even during the day. Tonight, it was completely dark, and that was how it was meant to be. I did not feel any need to stand up and look. Some places are better understood without being seen. I simply knew that the hallway was there, waiting in the same calm way it always did. The fire continued its quiet work, turning solid wood into soft, glowing shapes. I watched without counting the minutes. Time behaves differently when it is allowed to move slowly. If you stayed here long enough, you might begin to notice how heavy your eyelids feel, how the chair supports you without effort. Nothing needs to be done. Nothing needs to be decided. This night has already decided to be peaceful, and for now that is enough. The fire did not change much after that. It rarely does. I remained in the chair, feeling the quiet weight of the evening settle more deeply around me. The room seemed to grow larger the longer I stayed still, as if the walls were slowly stepping back to give the silence more space. At some point, the wind brushed against the outside of the house. It was not strong enough to be heard, only enough to be imagined. Old houses remember the wind even when it is gentle. They lean into it without complaint. My hands rested where they always did, loose and warm. I could no longer tell how long I had been sitting there, and that felt like a small success. When time loosens its grip, the body follows soon after. The clock ticked again, or perhaps it never stopped. The sound seemed farther away now, as if it belonged to another room. I did not bother to check. Knowing the exact hour would not improve anything. The hallway behind the small door remained dark. I thought of it the way one thinks of a familiar road not taken. It existed, and that was enough. There was no urgency to walk it tonight. The fire shifted slightly, a log settling into a new position. A brief sparkle appeared and then faded, like a thought that arrives without needing attention. I let it pass without following it. I once knew a man who believed every quiet moment needed explaining. He filled rooms with words, afraid they might collapse without them. He would not have lasted long here. This room prefers patience. My breathing had found its own rhythm now. Slow, even. Each breath seemed to finish before the next one began. There was no rush to continue. The chair supported my back in the same places it always had. It knew my shape better than I did. Furniture like this does not forget. It learns quietly over many years. Outside, the night remained still. No footsteps, no voices, just the sense that the world had stepped aside for a while. Nights like this are not empty. They are simply complete. The firelight moved gently across the floor, stretching and shrinking without purpose. I followed it with my eyes until the effort became unnecessary. Looking and not looking began to feel the same. If sleep wished to arrive now, there would be no objection. If it chose to wait, that would also be fine. Nothing in this room required a response. The fire continued to burn, steady and patient as it always had, and I remained, doing exactly nothing at all. The fire did not ask for attention, and that was what made it easy to watch. It simply existed, doing what fires have always done when left alone. I noticed how the room carried sound differently now. Even the smallest movement felt softened, as if the air itself had decided to be gentle. The house had settled fully into the night. Old beams, old walls, old floors, all resting together. My eyes traced the familiar cracks in the stone around the hearth. I had seen them many times before, though I could not remember when I first noticed them. Some things become familiar without ever having a beginning. The warmth from the fire moved slowly across my legs and hands. It was not the kind of heat that demands adjustment. It stayed where it was welcome and faded where it was not. I did nothing to guide it. The hallway behind the small door felt farther away now. Not because it had moved, but because everything else had become closer. The chair, the fire, the steady quiet inside the room. Distance changes when the mind stops measuring it. I thought briefly about the rooms beyond this one. The bedroom upstairs, the narrow staircase, the window that sometimes rattled when the weather turned. None of them required my presence at the moment. They would wait. The clock ticked again, slower than before, or perhaps I was slower in hearing it. Either way, the sound passed without leaving a mark. Time does that when it realizes it is not being watched. The fire made a small, hollow sound as a piece of wood settled inward. It was not sudden. It was expected, like a sentence ending exactly where it should. I allowed my eyelids to rest a little lower. Breathing had become something distant. I could sense it without needing to follow it. Each breath arrived, paused, and left quietly, like a visitor who knew the house well enough not to knock. The chair seemed to hold more of my weight than before, or perhaps I was giving it permission to do so. Either way, the effort of sitting had disappeared. Outside, the night remained unchanged. No movement, no signal that anything else needed attention. The world felt balanced in a way that only happens when nothing is happening at all. If someone were to walk into the room now, they might think nothing was taking place. They would be correct, and they would be mistaken at the same time. The fire continued to burn. The room continued to rest. And I allowed myself to remain exactly where I was, without reason, without plan, without urgency. For now, the quiet was complete. The room seemed to breathe along with me, though I could not say when that began. Perhaps it had always been that way, waiting for me to notice. The firelight softened further, its edges less defined now. Shadows no longer clung tightly to the corners. They drifted instead, unbothered by shape or direction. Nothing in this room felt sharp. My thoughts moved more slowly, not because I guided them, but because they had nowhere urgent to go. When a thought appeared, it stayed briefly, then wandered off without explanation. There was no need to follow it. The small table beside the chair held an old book, unopened. I could not remember placing it there, and that felt appropriate. Some books are meant to be nearby, not read. Their presence alone is enough. The clock continued its quiet work, though the space between each sound felt longer. Or perhaps I was simply listening less. Sound loses its importance when silence has already said everything. The hallway remained dark and patient. I imagined the floorboards resting beneath the shadows, remembering the weight of footsteps from years ago. Tonight they held only stillness, and they did so well. The warmth from the fire now felt evenly spread, as if the room had agreed on a single temperature and settled into it. There was no longer a need to shift or adjust. The body understands comfort before the mind does. I noticed my hands had grown heavier where they rested, not uncomfortable, just settled. Muscles had released their hold without asking permission. They no longer waited for instruction. Outside, the night offered no surprises. The wind had gone quiet again, or perhaps it had never been there. It made little difference. The house remained unmoved. The fire gave a soft, low sound, barely audible. It reminded me of something being finished rather than something beginning. I allowed my eyes to close for a moment, then open again, then rest somewhere in between. In this place, moments did not stack on top of each other. They spread out, wide and gentle, leaving room to rest between them. Time had become something soft. If sleep chose to arrive now, it would not interrupt anything. If it chose to wait, nothing would be lost. The chair held. The fire burned. The room remained steady. And I stayed, quietly drifting, with no need to move forward or back, letting the night continue at its own unhurried pace. Nothing announced itself in the room, and that felt right. The night had learned how to move without sound. The fire seemed lower now, not weaker, just calmer. Its glow rested closer to the logs, as if it had found a comfortable position and decided to stay there. I watched without expecting anything from it. Fire behaves best when it is not being judged. The chair supported me in quiet agreement. Every part of it knew its role. The arms held my weight. The back met me where I leaned. There was no negotiation between us. Comfort had already been settled. The air felt thicker, not heavy, just full of warmth, full of stillness, full of the kind of quiet that does not need filling. Breathing continued on its own, smooth and unremarkable. My eyes no longer searched the room. They rested wherever they happened to land, the stone, the wood, the slow movement of light along the floor. Seeing had become effortless. The book on the table remained unopened. Its cover reflected a thin line of firelight that shifted slightly, then returned. It did not invite attention. It simply waited, as books often do. The hallway behind the small door felt distant again, though it had not changed. Distance, I realized, has very little to do with space. It has more to do with interest. Tonight, there was none to spare. The clock's ticking faded further into the background. It was still there, doing what clocks do, but it no longer belonged to the center of anything. Time had moved to the edges. The fire made a gentle sound, like wood adjusting its memory. I did not look up immediately. There was no urgency. When I did glance back, nothing had changed, and that was comforting. My shoulders sank a little deeper, releasing the last of their effort. Muscles that had held themselves ready all day finally understood they were no longer needed. They let go without ceremony. Outside, the night remained quiet and undisturbed. No sign of morning, no hint of change. Just a steady pause that stretched comfortably in all directions. If sleep arrived now, it would feel like a continuation, not an interruption. If it waited, the waiting would be gentle. The fire continued its patient work. The room remained still, and I stayed exactly where I was, resting in the middle of nothing happening, allowing the night to carry on without my involvement. The longer I remained still, the quieter everything became, though nothing had actually changed. It was as if the room had simply decided to stop reminding me that it was there. The fire now gave off a softer glow, spreading warmth without direction. It no longer flickered in noticeable ways. It rested, steady and content, like something that had finished speaking and did not expect a reply. I noticed how the floor felt beneath my feet, solid and unmoving. Even without looking, I knew exactly where everything was. Familiar places do not require attention. They hold their shape whether or not they are being observed. The air moved gently with each breath, in and out, nothing more. There was no need to deepen it or slow it. Breathing had become something the body handled quietly without instruction. The walls seemed farther away now, as if the room had widened while I was not watching. Space behaves differently when there is no need to cross it. It becomes calm instead of distant. The small sounds of the house continued in their own way. A faint settling somewhere above. A quiet stretch of wood adjusting to the temperature. None of it asked to be noticed. None of it needed a name. The hallway remained where it had always been. Dark, narrow, unchanged. I thought of it briefly, not with curiosity, but with familiarity. It felt like a memory that did not need revisiting. My eyelids rested lower again, hovering between open and closed. Vision softened around the edges, losing detail without losing comfort. Seeing less began to feel like a relief. The chair seemed to rise slightly to meet me, or perhaps I had finally allowed myself to sink fully into it. The distinction no longer mattered. Support had become complete. Time moved without markers now. No beginning, no end. Just a slow continuation that felt wide enough to rest inside. Moments blended together until they felt like one long, quiet stretch. Outside, the night remained patient. It did not hurry toward morning. It did not suggest change. It simply stayed, holding the world in place. If sleep came now, it would arrive quietly, without announcement. If it chose to wait, the waiting would feel the same. The fire continued to glow. The room continued to hold. And I remained, drifting gently, allowing the night to carry me without asking where I was going. The night seemed to stretch itself even thinner, as if it had decided there was no need to hurry toward anything else. Everything felt paused, but not unfinished. The fire had settled into a quiet pattern now. Its light no longer danced. It rested. The glow stayed close to the hearth, spreading gently across the stone and wood, never reaching too far, never pulling back completely. I became aware of how still my body was. Not stiff, not tense, just unmoving in a natural way. The kind of stillness that happens when there is nothing left to adjust. My thoughts arrived more slowly now. When one appeared, it felt distant, already fading before it had fully formed. There was no effort in letting it go. It seemed to leave on its own, as if it had somewhere else to be. The room felt familiar beyond memory. I could not recall the first time I had sat here, yet it felt as though I always had. Some places exist outside of time, repeating themselves without needing a beginning. The hallway remained dark and quiet. I no longer sensed it as something separate. It had become part of the background, like a shadow that does not move when you turn your head. The clock's ticking had nearly disappeared. Whether it continued or not no longer mattered. Time had loosened its structure, becoming something wide and indistinct. My breathing had slowed without instruction. Each breath finished completely before the next one began. There was a gentle pause in between, a space that felt comfortable and unoccupied. The chair held my weight evenly now, no pressure points, no awareness of edges. It felt less like sitting, and more like being supported from all sides at once. Outside, the night remained unchanged. No sound of passing cars, no distant voices, just the steady sense that everything else had chosen to rest as well. The fire made a faint sound, so small it could almost be imagined. I did not look toward it. There was no need to confirm its presence. I already knew it was there. If sleep wished to come closer now, there would be nothing to stop it. If it stayed at a distance, that distance felt gentle. The room continued to hold its shape. The fire continued to glow, and I remained, quietly drifting, allowing the calm to deepen without effort, letting the night carry on exactly as it was. The quiet did not deepen so much as it spread. It moved gently into places I had not noticed before, settling there without asking permission. The fire remained steady, its glow now more felt than seen. Light and warmth blended together, becoming one soft presence in the room. There was no clear edge to it anymore. It simply existed, surrounding without enclosing. I noticed how little effort it took to remain where I was. Sitting required nothing. Even thinking felt optional. The body had found a position it did not wish to improve upon. The room seemed to hum without sound, as if every surface had agreed to hold still at the same time. The walls did not lean. The floor did not shift. Everything stayed exactly as it was. My eyelids rested lower again, drifting toward closure and stopping there, as if undecided. Vision softened into shapes and tones rather than details. The fire became a warm blur, and that felt right. The hallway behind the small door had fully disappeared from my awareness. Not gone, simply no longer relevant. The room had narrowed its focus to what mattered most, and that list had grown very short. The clock, if it was still ticking, did so somewhere beyond concern. Time had thinned out, stretched so wide that individual moments no longer stood apart. There was only a general sense of continuation. Breathing moved quietly through me. In, out. Each breath felt complete, leaving no loose ends behind. The space between breaths felt generous, like a pause that did not need filling. The chair seemed to support not just my body, but the idea of effort itself. It held everything that might have needed holding, leaving nothing for me to manage. Outside, the night remained steady and unchanging. It did not signal toward morning. It did not suggest movement. It simply stayed calm and patient. The fire made no sound at all now, or perhaps I no longer noticed it. Either way, the absence felt comfortable, like a familiar silence settling into place. If sleep arrived now, it would feel natural, expected. If it chose to wait, the waiting would be gentle and unremarkable. The room remained. The warmth remained. And I continued to drift, slowly and easily, allowing the night to carry everything forward without effort or attention. By now, the room no longer felt like a place I was sitting in. It felt more like something I was floating inside, gently held from all sides. The fire's presence had softened into a steady warmth, no longer drawing the eye. It existed without needing to be seen, the way familiar things do when they have earned trust. I did not check on it. There was no concern that it might leave. My body felt heavier in a pleasant way, as if gravity itself had grown kinder. Every point of contact seemed supported, nothing pressed, nothing pulled. Everything simply stayed. Thoughts had slowed to the point of being almost unrecognizable. When one appeared, it felt incomplete, fading before it could form a direction. I did not try to finish it. Unfinished thoughts felt easier. The air in the room felt unchanged, steady and neutral, neither warm nor cool, just right enough to forget about. Breathing continued without effort, smooth and even, like a quiet tide. I noticed that my awareness had narrowed, not sharply, but gently, like a lens slowly losing focus. The edges of the room no longer mattered. Only the center remained, calm and undemanding. The chair no longer felt like an object. It had become part of the stillness, a shape that existed to hold and nothing more. I trusted it completely without thinking about why. If the hallway still existed beyond the door, it did so without my involvement. Distance had lost meaning. Near and far no longer applied. Everything important was already here. The clock, the walls, the floor, all seemed to share the same quiet agreement. Nothing would change suddenly. Nothing would ask for attention. The night had settled into something stable. My eyelids drifted closer to closing again, lingering there. Light filtered through in softened tones, dim and gentle. The fire's glow blended into the darkness until they were nearly the same thing, Outside, the world remained paused. No sound reached in, no movement called out. It felt as though the night had placed a careful hand over everything and chosen to keep it still. If sleep wished to take hold now, it would do so easily. If it waited, that waiting felt calm and complete. The warmth remained. The quiet remained. And I stayed suspended in that calm, letting everything slow even further, with no reason to return, no need to move, and nowhere else to be. The fire had settled into the kind of glow that needed no attention at all. It no longer seemed to push light into the room or demand that it be noticed. It simply existed, steady and patient, as if it had finally stopped caring whether anyone watched. I shifted slightly in the chair, though not enough to disturb the stillness. Movement here was measured, small and slow. Every part of the body seemed content to simply be, releasing the need to act, to adjust, to decide. The room felt more like an extension of the quiet itself than a place with walls and corners. Light and shadow blended together until the difference seemed irrelevant. The fire's warmth stretched gently across the floor, reaching places it had never reached before without anyone asking it to. Breathing had become automatic. I no longer noticed it except as a distant, calming rhythm. Inhale, exhale. Each breath followed the last without urgency, leaving behind the space between for nothing but stillness. The small door to the hallway remained in shadow, but I did not look. It did not need observation to exist. I trusted its quiet presence. The hallway could wait. All other things could wait. The night had chosen its pace, and I chose to follow without thought. Time no longer carried meaning. There was no beginning or end. There was simply this moment stretching itself out, unbroken, unbothered. Each second was the same as the last, each one full without needing more. The chair seemed to accept my weight completely now, cradling me without effort. Muscles that had always been ready to adjust finally let go. Comfort arrived quietly, without announcement, without expectation. Outside, the night remained unchanged. The wind had faded to nothing. Even the faintest sounds of distant life had disappeared. The world had paused for a while, leaving only this quiet room and the fire's soft glow. My eyelids grew heavier. There was no rush, no sudden need to close them entirely. Just a slow descent into darkness, gentle and patient, without interruption. The fire shifted ever so slightly, as if remembering the way it had always behaved. Its warmth and light were steady, unchanging. I did not watch it closely, yet I knew it was there. If sleep arrived now, it would arrive gently, without force. If it waited, the waiting was calm, complete, and unbothered. The room held its shape. The fire held its glow. And I remained still, quietly resting in the middle of a night that had learned how to be endless and calm. The room had become something unchanging, a steady companion for the long hours of night. Nothing rushed. Nothing demanded attention. The fire continued its patient work, burning quietly, glowing softly, and never moving too quickly. I shifted my weight slightly in the chair, though it made no sound. The chair seemed to anticipate the movement, cradling me fully without protest. I had long stopped noticing the small creak it sometimes made. It was no longer necessary to pay attention. The air was steady, neither too warm nor too cool. It carried the faint smell of wood smoke, calm and unobtrusive. It reminded me of other nights when the world outside had also seemed to pause, giving space for nothing to intrude. The small hallway remained dark, still holding its quiet distance. It was easy to imagine it empty, quiet, unvisited. I felt no need to walk toward it. There was nothing pressing to be discovered. Some places exist simply to exist. My breathing had become a gentle rhythm, long and even. Each exhale seemed to stretch a little farther than the last. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. The pauses themselves felt like part of the night, part of the calm that had settled in every corner. The fire's glow shifted slightly as a log settled, but it made no sound that I noticed. Its light spread across the room, touching surfaces just enough to let me see without focusing. The room had stopped being separate from the night. It was a continuation, a small piece of the larger stillness. My eyelids were heavy, hovering between open and closed, yet I kept them slightly open to let the light drift in. The glow was soft, steady, not demanding attention. It seemed more like a memory than a current presence, and that was comforting. Outside, the night offered no movement, no wind, no footsteps, no voices. Only the quiet patience of hours that had nowhere else to go. Time had stretched itself so thin it had lost its shape, leaving nothing but the sensation of being in a long, slow moment. If sleep chose to enter now, it would do so gently, without rushing, without startling me. If it chose to wait, that waiting would feel like part of the calm, unremarkable, and safe. The chair continued to hold me. The room continued to exist. The fire continued its patient glow. And I remained still, quietly sinking deeper into the comfort of nothing needing to happen, letting the night carry me forward without interruption. The fire had softened even further, no longer casting sharp shadows or sudden sparks. Its glow stretched lazily across the floor, reaching places I hadn't noticed before without needing to. It did not ask for attention. It simply was. I shifted slightly in the chair, careful not to disturb the stillness that had settled over the room. Each movement felt measured, deliberate, but almost automatic. The chair cradled me as if it had always known exactly how I would rest. The air felt warmer now, not heavy, not noticeable, just enough to remind the body it was alive and comfortable. Breathing followed its own quiet rhythm, long, slow, and easy. Each inhale brought nothing urgent. Each exhale released nothing unneeded. The hallway behind the small door remained in shadow, a silent presence that required nothing of me. I thought of it briefly and let my mind wander, knowing that it was there, waiting but not demanding. Distance had lost its weight. Presence had taken on a gentler shape. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, all held their quiet positions. Nothing pressed, nothing shifted. The room seemed to understand its purpose, to hold, to contain, to let time pass gently, almost without notice. I trusted it completely. The fire shifted slightly as a log settled, a faint sound, nearly imperceptible, that carried the same patience as the glow. I did not look closely. I did not need to. The knowledge that it continued to burn was enough. Outside, the night remained still. No sounds reached the window, no wind disturbed the trees, no distant voices traveled far enough to matter. The world had paused in unspoken agreement. Only the room existed, holding its quiet and warmth. My eyelids dropped a little further, though not fully closed. Vision softened into shapes and tones rather than detail. The fire's glow blurred into the room until it felt as if it were a gentle memory rather than a present light. And that memory, familiar and unhurried, was comforting. Time itself felt like a soft cloth stretching and flattening under its own weight. There was no beginning, no end, only this steady continuation. Each moment existed complete in itself, without needing comparison to what came before or after. If sleep decided to arrive now, it would do so quietly, without startling or sudden change. If it waited, the waiting itself felt complete and untroubled. The chair continued to support me. The fire continued to glow gently. The room remained as it was, and I stayed, letting the night carry me slowly, quietly, deeper into the calm that had settled fully around me. The fire's glow had softened even further, no longer drawing attention but rather settling comfortably into the room. It spread warmth without insistence, touching the floor and walls in a quiet, patient way. The room had become a space that did not demand any action, only gentle observation. I leaned further into the chair, feeling it cradle me as though it had always known exactly how I would sit. Every muscle had released tension without announcement. Even the smallest points of contact had found ease. The chair no longer felt like an object, but part of the calm itself. The air remained neutral, carrying only the faint scent of smoke and wood, subtle and unintrusive. Breathing had become automatic. I barely noticed it, though each inhale and exhale was steady, deliberate, and complete. The hallway beyond the small door remained dark and unchanging. I did not turn to look at it. Its existence was enough, known but not intrusive. Distance had lost its meaning, replaced by a quiet awareness that nothing urgent lay beyond this room. The fire moved imperceptibly, a log settling slightly, making a soft crackle that barely disturbed the silence. Watching it closely was unnecessary. Knowing it continued was sufficient. The walls and ceiling seemed to expand subtly, giving the room more space than I had imagined. Each surface carried stillness like a weightless fabric, holding the quiet in place. Shadows stretched, blurred, and faded into one another. Time had almost lost its shape. The ticking clock was present but faint, a background hum rather than a marker. Minutes had dissolved into hours that did not feel counted. The night itself seemed endless, stretching slowly and deliberately, unbothered by concern. Outside, the world remained motionless. No wind, no voices, no distant sounds of life. The night carried patience like a gentle hand, holding everything in place. The house felt contained, self-sufficient, a cocoon of calm. My eyelids drifted lower, heavy but not fully closed. The firelight softened the room, and vision became shapes rather than details. Every object melted into gentle forms, easy to rest with, easy to forget. The chair continued to hold me effortlessly. The fire continued its patient glow. The room remained perfectly still, and I stayed there, quietly, letting the night stretch further, allowing the calm to settle completely without needing to move, speak, or think. The room had grown quieter still, though nothing had truly changed. The fire burned with a calm consistency, its light soft and unobtrusive, spreading warmth that required no effort to receive. It seemed content simply to exist, doing what it had always done, without hurry, without demand. I settled further into the chair, feeling every point of contact evenly supported. Muscles relaxed without thought, joints released without effort. The chair had become a part of the stillness, carrying me completely, silently, with no need for attention or adjustment. The air remained even and neutral, filled only with the faint scent of burning wood, comforting and constant. Each breath came and went without effort. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. Each pause held space for nothing at all, yet felt perfectly full. The hallway beyond the small door remained in darkness, distant yet present. I did not need to see it. Its quiet existence was enough, a boundary marking space without requiring notice. The room contained all that mattered tonight. The fire shifted slightly as a log settled, producing the smallest of sounds. I did not check it, nor did I need to. Its presence was assured. The glow spread across surfaces in gentle waves, highlighting the grain of the wood, the cool smoothness of the stone, without insisting that I look. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, all held their positions without complaint. Shadows blended into light, and light softened into shadow. The space seemed suspended in patience, allowing moments to stretch without urgency, without meaning beyond themselves. Time had lost its edges entirely. The ticking of the clock remained faint, more suggestion than signal. Minutes bled into one another until they became a continuous, slow stream. The night itself felt endless, patient, and unhurried. Outside, the world remained still. No wind stirred, no distant noise intruded. The night held everything gently in place, leaving this room as a small sanctuary where nothing needed attention. My eyelids grew heavier, hovering between open and closed. Shapes softened, edges faded. The fire's glow became memory more than light, a gentle presence that required no observation. And that was comforting. The chair continued to hold me fully. The fire continued its calm glow. The room continued exactly as it had, and I stayed, quiet, still, drifting slowly deeper into the night's patience, allowing everything to carry on without concern or effort. The room had settled into something almost unnoticeable, a quiet presence that needed no attention. The fire burned steadily, low and patient, casting a soft glow that touched every corner without insistence. Its warmth was gentle, wrapping around the space like a familiar weight, unnoticed yet fully present. I sank further into the chair, letting it hold me completely. Every muscle released itself into quiet submission. My body no longer needed effort to maintain balance or posture. The chair cradled me without thought, without sound, with a patience that had grown over countless nights. The air was soft and even, neither warm nor cold, only a gentle presence that allowed the body to relax further. Breathing followed its own rhythm, steady and slow. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. Each pause filled the spaces that might otherwise have been occupied by thought or worry. The small hallway beyond the closed door remained dark, distant, and entirely patient. Its presence required nothing from me. I did not turn to see it. I only acknowledged it, letting it exist without curiosity, without interference. It could wait. Everything could wait. The fire made the smallest of sounds as a log shifted slightly, a quiet reminder that movement continued even here in stillness. I did not look directly at it, nor did I need to. Its presence was enough. Light and warmth spread gently, settling over the wooden floor and stone walls without urgency. Walls, ceiling, floor, all held their shapes quietly, blending shadow and glow until edges became soft, lines disappeared, and the room became one continuous calm. The space seemed to stretch, broad and patient, offering itself completely without request. Time had no markers. The clock ticked somewhere far away, barely a suggestion. Moments blurred together into a seamless stream, stretching indefinitely. The night itself seemed endless, steady, and unbothered by any notion of beginning or end. Outside, silence reigned. No wind stirred the trees, no distant voices broke the quiet. The world had paused in its own way, leaving the room as a small sanctuary where stillness could exist undisturbed. My eyelids felt heavy, hovering between open and closed. Vision softened to muted shapes, shadows blending into firelight, all edges dissolving slowly into calm. Watching became optional. Awareness itself became optional. The chair continued to hold me completely. The fire continued its soft, patient glow. The room continued as it had, unchanged and steady. And I remained, quietly suspended in the calm, drifting with the night's unhurried pace, letting everything unfold exactly as it was meant to. The room had grown stiller than before, though nothing had truly changed. The fire burned quietly, its glow calm and unassertive, spreading warmth that touched the floor, the walls, and the ceiling in a gentle, steady embrace. It required no attention, only acknowledgement, and that alone was enough. I shifted slightly in the chair, though the movement was minimal. The chair seemed to respond, cradling me without effort, perfectly balanced, holding every inch of weight. Muscles relaxed further, joints released their tension, and I sank a little deeper without realizing it. The air remained even and soft, neither too warm nor too cool, carrying only the faint scent of burning wood. Breathing was effortless now, smooth and steady, in a rhythm that required no thought. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. Space existed between each breath, quiet and empty, yet complete. The hallway beyond the small door remained dark and patient, a silent boundary separating the room from the rest of the house. I did not turn to look. Its presence alone was enough. Distance had no meaning tonight. Everything that mattered existed here, in the calm, in the warmth, in the quiet. The fire shifted slightly as a log settled. A tiny, soft crackle reminded me it was still alive, still performing its gentle work. I did not check, nor did I need to. Knowing it was there, steady and unwavering, was sufficient. Light diffused slowly over surfaces, blurring edges, softening corners, making everything feel easier to rest with. Walls, floors, and ceilings held their shape without insistence. Shadows faded into the glow of the fire, and the fire's glow melted into shadows. Everything blended together, forming a gentle, uninterrupted space that held me entirely. Time had become a vague concept. The ticking of the clock remained somewhere, distant and faint, barely noticeable. Minutes flowed into one another, stretching seamlessly into hours. The night felt endless, patient, unhurried, and unbothered by the passage of time. Outside, the world remained motionless. No wind, no distant footsteps, no sounds of life reached the window. The night seemed to have paused everything beyond the room, leaving it untouched, safe, and steady. My eyelids drooped further, hovering between open and closed. The fire's glow softened vision into muted shapes. Edges faded, lines disappeared, the room becoming a cocoon of gentle forms. Watching became unnecessary. Being was enough. The chair continued to hold me fully. The fire continued its quiet glow. The room continued its patient existence. And I stayed, drifting slowly, suspended in calm, letting the night carry everything forward without effort, without interruption, without thought. The fire burned steadily, as if it had always known this night would unfold slowly, quietly, without interruption. Its glow stretched across the room, softening corners, touching the floor and walls without urgency, filling the space with warmth that required no attention. It existed for no purpose other than being present, and that was enough. I sank further into the chair, allowing it to hold me completely. Muscles that had once been tense released their hold. My body felt supported in every part, weight distributed evenly, breathing unhurried and natural. There was no need for adjustment. There was nothing to do. The air was steady and neutral, carrying only the faint, comforting smell of burning wood. Breathing was easy, automatic. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. The spaces between breaths felt wide, generous, and unoccupied. Time itself seemed to follow the same rhythm. The hallway beyond the small door remained in shadow, quiet and patient. I did not need to see it to know it was there. Distance lost all meaning tonight. The room contained all that mattered, and the rest could wait. Everything unnecessary had disappeared into silence. The fire shifted slightly as a log settled, making a sound so soft it could almost be imagined. I did not look. I did not need to. Knowing it continued, steady and reliable, was sufficient. Its light touched the wooden floor, the stone walls, blending edges and softening shapes until everything became gentle, familiar, and easy to rest with. Walls, ceiling, and floor remained still, holding their place without protest. Shadows and light intertwined into one seamless calm. The room had become a gentle vessel containing time, warmth, and quiet, allowing me to exist without effort or thought. Time had lost definition. The ticking clock became distant, a faint hum rather than a marker. Minutes flowed together, merging, stretching indefinitely. The night seemed endless, patient, unhurried, and untouched by the passage of hours. Outside, the world remained silent. No wind stirred the trees. No distant voices traveled far enough to matter. The night held everything gently in place, leaving this room as a sanctuary of calm, safe, and undisturbed. My eyelids drifted lower, hovering between open and closed. Shapes blurred, edges softened, and the fire's glow felt like a gentle memory rather than light. Watching became optional. Being was enough. The chair continued to hold me fully. The fire continued its patient glow. The room remained exactly as it had, and I stayed, quietly suspended in the calm, drifting deeper, letting the night carry everything forward, unhurried, without effort, and without thought. The night had grown fuller, though nothing had changed. The fire burned quietly, its glow steady and unobtrusive, warming the room in a soft, even way. It required no attention, made no demands. It simply existed, as it always had, patient and calm. I sank further into the chair, letting it support me completely. Every muscle relaxed, joints released tension without thought. My body no longer needed effort. It simply rested, fully, comfortably, without expectation. The chair seemed part of the night itself, holding me effortlessly. The air remained soft and even, neither warm nor cold. The faint smell of burning wood lingered gently, steady, and unintrusive. Breathing followed its own natural rhythm, smooth and slow. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. Each pause was wide, calm, complete, a space untouched by thought or worry. The hallway beyond the small door remained distant, dark, and patient. I did not look at it, nor did I need to. Its presence alone was enough. Distance lost meaning. Everything necessary was here: the warmth, the quiet, the gentle light of the fire. The fire made the faintest of sounds as a log shifted slightly, almost imperceptible. I did not look at it. I did not need to. Its glow stretched softly across the room, blending shadows and light, smoothing edges, creating a calm and easy space to rest within. The walls, ceiling, and floor remained steady, holding their shape without effort. Shadows melted into the glow of the fire, light softened into shadow. The room became a gentle vessel, a cocoon of quiet, patience, and warmth. It contained me fully, allowing nothing to intrude. Time had lost its shape. The clock ticked faintly somewhere in the background, more suggestion than signal. Minutes blurred together, hours stretched like slow, soft fabric. The night itself seemed endless, patient, and unhurried, moving with no concern for beginnings or endings. Outside, silence remained. No wind, no distant noises, no movement anywhere near enough to disturb the stillness. The night held everything in place, leaving this room as a sanctuary of calm, untouched, and safe. My eyelids grew heavier, drooping slowly toward closure. Shapes blurred, edges faded, and the fire's glow softened into a gentle memory rather than presence. Watching became unnecessary. Simply being was enough. The chair continued to hold me completely. The fire continued its steady glow. The room continued exactly as it had, and I stayed, quietly drifting, letting the night carry me slowly, deeper into calm, unhurried, and unbothered. The night had stretched quietly to its final hours, though nothing had truly changed. The fire burned steadily, its glow soft and unassertive, spreading warmth across the room in gentle waves. It did not seek attention. It simply existed, patient, calm, and unhurried, as if it had always known this night would last without interruption. I rested fully in the chair, sinking deeper than before. Muscles were loose, joints relaxed, every point of contact settled completely. The chair held me without thought or effort, cradling me as though it had always known exactly how I would rest. Comfort had become absolute. The air remained even, neutral, carrying only the faint, steady smell of burning wood. Breathing had become automatic, slow, and effortless. Inhale. Pause. Exhale. Pause. Each pause stretched long and generous, filled with nothing, yet full enough to be enough. The body had stopped worrying, stopped preparing, stopped needing. The hallway beyond the small door remained dark, patient, distant. I did not look. I did not need to. Its presence alone was enough, a quiet boundary separating the room from the rest of the house. It had no urgency. Neither did I. Everything necessary existed here, within the warmth, the glow, the stillness. The fire shifted subtly as a log settled, producing the faintest sound, a reminder of life moving softly, without demand. I did not check it. I did not need to. The light touched the wooden floor, the stone walls, blending shadows into warmth, smoothing edges, softening corners, allowing rest without attention. Walls, ceiling, and floor continued their quiet work, holding their shape, blending with shadow and light into one seamless calm. The room had become more than space. It had become a container for stillness itself, carrying me without interruption, without thought, without expectation. Time had vanished into the gentle stream of moments. The clock ticked somewhere, faint and distant, almost irrelevant. Minutes dissolved into hours, stretching endlessly. The night had learned to move slowly, evenly, fully, and I moved with it, suspended in its patience. Outside, silence remained. No wind, no distant noises, no voices. The world beyond the walls had paused, leaving the room untouched. Safety, warmth, and quiet filled every corner, complete and unbroken. My eyelids rested heavy, dropping fully at last, the glow of the fire softening into memory, comforting and calm. Vision was no longer necessary. Watching was no longer needed. Simply being, fully, was enough. The chair continued to hold me completely. The fire continued to glow softly. The room continued its patient existence. And I drifted, fully, gently, slowly, carried by the night, suspended in calm, letting the world continue without thought, without movement, without urgency. The night had finished its work, and I had finished mine. Simply resting, simply being, simply sleeping. The night was complete. The calm was complete, and now so was I.